Little Hope is the second official game in the Dark Pictures Anthology made by Supermassive Games. This series sort of originated with their breakout title, Until Dawn. And while that game was generally lauded, its successors have been seen as decent while stumbling here and there. While I personally loved Until Dawn, and was accepting of the first game in the Dark Picture Anthology, Man of Medan's, flaws as growing pains, I knew that Little Hope was going to have to do something to either spice things up or increase its quality over the previous games in the series. And in this case, it certainly tried, but didn't succeed in making Little Hope better than what came before it.
You all done with poking around?
Found this inside.
What the hell are you doing with a gun?
It was hidden under the floor.
You should have left it there. Guns are dangerous. We're already in enough trouble.
If you've never played one of Supermassive's horror titles, let me get you up to speed. The games play as interactive movies. With each story, you'll be playing as a group of survivors who are dealing with some horror that is unique to their specific tale, all while the events are conveyed through the mysterious Curator. With Man of Medan, the group was on a decrepit ghost ship, and for Little Hope, the group is in the small town of, well, Little Hope, trying to uncover a mystery of what happened within the town and how this mystery is connected to a force that is preventing them from leaving.
I admit that is a little odd.
More than a little.
See? What did I tell you?
It's just like I've been saying, we are trapped! We can't leave here! Now what can we
Okay,
do?
calm down, breathe. There's a rational explanation for what's happening.
The primary group of survivors in this particular tale consists of a professor named John and his students Anthony, Taylor, Daniel, and Angela. Unlike the previous story, Man of Medan, where all characters seem to share roughly around the same amount of narrative weight, the game makes it quite apparent early on that Anthony will be acting as our final guy archetype for the story, whether or not, of course, the other characters actually survive. This is also quite apparent based on the fact that he's played by the most well-known actor in the group, Will Poulter, while most of the other characters are based off of reused assets from previous Supermassive titles. Now, I'm not complaining about Supermassive reusing character models, as it isn't a huge deal in the long run. It actually gives the series somewhat of a similar feeling to American Horror Story, where the characters may be different, but the actors who are playing them are the same, even though, in this case, the actual voice actors may not be the same from title to title. Speaking of the acting in the game, it's actually quite good, even if the stunted lines from previous titles do make an appearance, making their delivery a bit more awkward than it probably should be.
Bad things happened here a long time ago.
Which you are dying to tell us all about.
I'm starting not to like you or your attitude.
I'm not even started yet. You want a little more?
Try to be civil. Cost nothing.
That's rich, given how you badmouthed Taylor on the way over.
What did you say about me?
You always get your boyfriend to stick up for you? Try doing it yourself sometime, dear.
Like its predecessor, Little Hope has three main ways to play. You can play single player, swapping between each of the characters as the story requires you to, couch co-op, where everyone chooses a character at the beginning and swaps between them when their character becomes available, or the game mode that is arguably how the developers want you to play, online co-op. In online co-op, you and another player will be playing simultaneously, sometimes together, sometimes separately. When you are together, there are times where you and the player can get into a conversation, often leading to unique conversation strings that you can't see otherwise. While most of these conversations are filler and don't drastically change what can happen in the game, it is interesting that in order to see everything that the Dark Anthology games have to offer, you're going to need another person with another copy of the game to play with. When separated, you may gather information and see other scenes that the other player will not, which encourages replayability so you can see the other side of things. Though there is also what is known as the Curator's Cut, which contains a lot of the scenes that the player wouldn't have normally seen if they were playing in single player. But you won't be able to play through this content unless you pre-ordered the game, or are willing to wait however many months until this mode will become available freely. The co-op does have some unique downsides though, as there are times where you may have completed your task, but the other player is still going through theirs, and the game will not allow you to proceed until the other player has finished. This can be a little awkward if you haven't realized that the issue isn't that you're doing anything wrong, and just that you're waiting for the other player to finish their specific tasks. Segments in this game are generally separated into two distinct categories: exploration and quicktime events. Exploration is generally pretty standard as you meander around, finding different clues and trying to talk to the other characters. The quicktime segments are where things start to get a bit more hectic, and generally when characters are in the most danger. Obviously, the game needs a balance of both to create that distinct horror atmosphere, but the game does feel a bit lopsided when it comes to its pacing, with the first half of the story meandering around for a bit too long, with the second involving different characters coming across danger at a breakneck pace, with occasional downtime moments in between.
Go!
On paper, the story seems somewhat basic, but generally tries to keep things intriguing enough to keep one's attention from beginning to end, and in this aspect, the game generally succeeds. Each of the characters have a series of traits, both good and bad, and while in previous games the characters didn't seem to change much depending on your choices, here the characters actually feel like they evolve based off of what you say and do. If you find Angela to be a bit hard-nosed, intrusively butting into everyone's business, you have the opportunity to change that, making her more sympathetic as the story goes on. Or you can keep her on this antagonistic path and see where that gets you. In this way, the game provides the players with the tools to make the cast more likable as the story goes on, or keep them a group of bickering jerks that only make each other more miserable. Either way, the choices and consequences are in the player's hands. While this certainly kept the story interesting enough to keep me hooked through its 5-hour campaign, by the time the end was finally reached, I did feel kind of cheated by the game's big twist, which is something that ultimately undermines the game's very premise on a whole, and is more likely to lessen a player's desire to come back to the game after they've finished their first playthrough. A shame, as seeing alternate outcomes is kind of what this game was practically made for. It also doesn't help that on subsequent playthroughs, the red herrings that the game throws at you feel more and more out of place once you already know what's going to happen. While I enjoyed Little Hope, I feel that the series is going to start annoying its player base if they don't improve on the stories that they are trying to tell. While I do look forward to the next game in the series, and even though that I think the story in Little Hope was better than Man of Medan, I can say that compared to the other stories that Supermassive Games has come out with, Little Hope is the least likely one that I'm going to want to return to in the future. Thank you for watching this review of Little Hope. I was kind of conflicted on this one. I generally do like the titles that Supermassive Games comes out with, but I don't know, I feel like they need to step up their game a little bit. If you enjoyed the review, please tell me in the comments below. Or if you think I'm a complete dum-dum, you can also tell me that there as well. If you like this content and would like to help support me make more, you can do so by following my Patreon link down below. I have a few different tiers with unique rewards for each of them. If you can't or simply don't want to support me that way, that's also fine. Liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already also helps me in the long run. With that, as always, I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.